Katana 3.6 has a really great new, two new sort of marquee features and a lot of small things. But the big things are a new snapping system built on top of the Hydra technology, so that is going to help grow that. But the beautiful thing about Katana when we focus on look development and lighting is that it allows us to build things like snapping in a way that is very focused to those particular tasks. So it's not a snapping that we need to worry about for modeling, things like that. So we focused in on the particular needs of moving, placing lights, and set adjustments. So, really, if you have a chance, get in there, check it out. And then finally, the network material edit. This is something that is awesome. This allows you to make shot-based procedural edits to your shading networks in a way that looks completely familiar. It's just like touching the shading network, but it's actually a procedural override. So we're really proud of this. We have Katana 3.7 coming up later this year. Please definitely keep your eyes open for that one. It is going to be an amazing release where we're touching the lighting workflows. We're going to dig into some areas that you'll find really exciting when we sort of reveal those later this year. But without further ado, I'd really like to turn it over to our speakers. We've got a great panel for you today, all very accomplished, various sort of different career paths and projects that they've worked on. And if you are interested in becoming a CG supervisor in the future, then you've got a lot of great people that you can learn from today.
You can now add to materials as well as all geochannel aliases.
And thank you to our speakers for joining us today. And finally, over to Daniel.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. So I guess just to briefly introduce myself, I've been in the business for a long time now, more than I'm willing to share time-wise. I started in television many years ago, and then slowly made my way to feature productions. That allowed me to eventually get into positions where I've been CG supervising for quite a few years now. I guess one side note to that is, in my mind, CG supervision is never really a one-man job. It's really a team effort. So you do interact with different type of disciplines and people and artistry. So it's important to understand that being a CG supervisor is also mean intrinsically that it's a team effort. But just to briefly describe my background. So I again, because I've done so many different type of things, I've been very lucky to understand coding, and I've been lucky to understand art. Many consider me a lighter by profession, and I've been very lucky. I have instructors like Jordan here and many other people along my career, and Masa myself, that really helped me to grow my skills. And then, as a CG supervisor, I transitioned towards more troubleshooting and coding and building pipelines and making sure that shows are delivered. So from this slide, you can see I've been involved in many different areas. And more recently, focusing on pipeline construction has been very important. So the interaction with Foundry has been quite critical as well. At the moment, I'm working on my own projects, which is, I feel very lucky for. And I'm building a few websites to help people, learn about the business and get better about it. And that's me.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Daniel, and welcome to the panel. And next on to John Mario.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the Foundry for inviting me. This is great. Sharing what I do and why I do it. It's always a pleasure for me. And this is another opportunity, and I love it. So right now I'm working at Bardell Entertainment in Vancouver. It's an animation company. So we mainly do 3D and 2D animation for TV and small budget features. We worked on various projects that you may have seen on Netflix or the TV, both 2D and 3D. So a little bit about me. My spark was in 1993, where Jurassic Park came out. And that's when I discovered that I could do dinosaurs for a living. And it's like, it blew me away. And I wanted to pursue the career in visual effects and computer animation. I went to a design school back in Rome, in Italy, where like I mainly developed my artistic sensibility, but the technical part wasn't there. I couldn't make dinosaurs yet. I started working in a commercial agency back in Rome, and I was a generalist there, and I learned a lot. That was like my first job. It was paid nothing, but it was super fun. After that, I really wanted to understand how to get into the visual effects industry. So I was admitted at Nomon School of Visual Effects. And that's where I actually learned how to do the dinosaurs. Like the tech part was there at that point. So I had a little bit of both worlds, artistic and technical, and that helped me a lot in my career. Like an artist that knows both is very valuable, in my opinion. I worked a little bit into commercial and small visual effects shops back in Los Angeles, where, again, I was generalist, but I started focusing my skills in lighting and comp mostly, because that's what I liked the most and I was better at, basically. After like 2 or 3 years, more than 2, 3 years in Los Angeles, I went back to Rome. And I joined a company called Rainbow CGI. And it was one of the few companies in Italy doing animation at the time. And it was a great experience for me. I stayed there for 10 years, pretty much 9 to 10 years. And I worked with so many talented people. It helped me understand how to troubleshoot problems. It helped me understand how to not break the bank, because unfortunately Italy is not very rich in TV production, and feature production as well. So we had to be smart. We had to understand how to do it fast. It had to look good, and it also didn't have to break our banks. So that was a very, very good experience for me. On top of that, we also created a school there. And for me, that's probably the best thing to learn for any artist or supervisor. Since I had to teach someone, I also had to learn everything, basically, because the students ask questions and I had to know how to answer. So for me, it was a very formative experience as well. After those 10 years, I came to Vancouver. I joined MPC, and visual effects are different. I kind of love them and hate them at the same time, and I think that's like a common thing for visual effects. It's great because it has a lot of quality into it, but it also like probably less fun for a person like me, which likes to troubleshoot the pipeline and understand where the problems are. MPC is very good for that because it's very smooth compared to what I was used to. Which brings me to where I am now and what I do. I am Studio CG Supervisor in Bardell right now, and these are mainly my tasks. So probably the main one is translate what comes from design into what then is that we do in CG. So we always get like some drawings, some concepts, and they get handed to us and they say, okay, now let's make them in CG. And that process is not that easy. We have to understand how to make them in CG. Sometimes they draw without knowing the consequences of what they're drawing. Is it too expensive? Does it have 20 arms and 15 heads? And then we have to rig 20 arms and 15 heads. So we have to understand it's a dialogue between design and actually the CG department. And I'm kind of the bridge in there. Like I talk to both worlds, and which makes it very cool. That's why artistic and technical merge together in this position, I think. The second task is inventing new ways of breaking the pipeline, which it's fun and not fun at the same time, meaning that CG supervisors are the one that bring new tools, new softwares inside. For example, Katana, where right now switching our look dev and lighting departments to Katana. And thanks, Jordan, for all the support, by the way. It's really amazing. And it's, of course, the pipeline that was there for Maya before doesn't work anymore. So I kind of broke it, but then working together with the pipeline team, as Daniele was saying, this is a joint effort. It's not a one-man show. CG supervisor alone cannot do anything by himself. So like we build new tools together, we build new scripts, and just we make it work better than before. So that's the point. When a production is running, another task for me is to jump between departments and understanding where things are breaking and try to fix it or find a workaround to fix it. So sometimes I broke it because I introduced something. Sometimes it breaks. It's normal, and then we're there for that. We have to understand how to make it back to work. As I was saying before, and this is a skill that I learned in the Italian production the most, we have to be aware of what the budget is and try not to break the bank. In CG, we can do anything, right? Everything is possible, but how much is that possible? So we have to understand how the cost involved in a decision, and we have to be careful because we don't want to break the bank and like make the production unviable. Of course, there is an artistic part in the CG supervision, especially in Bardell. We have to make the things look good. Whatever we put on screen, on TV or movie theater, whatever it is, it has to be as beautiful as we can make it. So it's also our job, or my job in this case, to make sure that the quality is there, that we deliver the style, that we deliver a good product, and again, in the limits of our budget. In Bardell, there is a fun part of this job, which is taking part in development projects with Tina Chow, our head of development in Bardell. We have to do a lot of tests, and it's probably the most fun part of this job is to understand, because in these development tests, we always get like very different things to make. Is it toon shaded ones? Is it a hybrid between toon and photoreal, for example? Is there fur? Is there not fur? Do we have to texture the fur? Do we have to groom the fur? So there is a lot of decisions there, and there is a lot of artistic paths that we have to take to make these little development projects, which are like shorts. And I feel like it's almost like Pixar is doing his shorts for like developing their pipeline and technologies. That's our way of doing it in Bardell. And last point is, again, we have to be a little bit of everything as CG supervisor, and we have to manage people. We have to sometimes get in our hands dirty and do some of the shots, like I do a lot of them. My focus is mainly lighting and comp, so I focus on that. But we have to get our hands dirty sometimes and do it ourselves or show how to do it to someone. And of course, the TD part, which is sometimes we have to do some tools or scripts. So we're like little Swiss Army knives of production. That's what I think CG supervisor needs to be. And we go a little bit like nimble into every single department and phase of production. Unfortunately, to present time, I still haven't made any dinosaurs, but well, there is still time. So let's see what happens. Thank you very much.
Okay, then over to you, Masa.
Hello. Thank you so much, Jordan and Elise, for organizing this program and invite us in. That's very fantastic to be here. My background is actually very similar to Daniel and Gemo. It's I started with lighting and compositing as well. So if we want to go back a little bit further back to my life, I'm actually born and raised in Iran, in a family that my mom and dad actually owned an animation studio. So I learned the art of filmmaking and animation from my mom and dad from a very, very young age. And basically that path of life was set for me. It felt like this is what I have to do, because I started doing it from such a young age. I started animating when I was a teenager, and then in early 90s, my parents actually moved to computer animation from classical animation. So I started learning computer animation in there. I went to university for fine arts because, of course, being an artist is one of the most important things in the world of movies and animation, especially. After I got my degree in fine arts, I moved to Canada, and I actually started as a 2D animator at the beginning. And at the same time, I went to Sheridan College for 2 years for computer animation and technical direction course, which basically gave me an opportunity to create a demo reel and a diploma that I can get a job in a computer animation. Of course, all of us at that era, which is very, very long time ago, as Mr. Tosti said, that I don't want to reveal exactly what year, but a very, very long time ago, when we started in the industry, we all started as generalists. We had to do everything. I remember at the first company I worked with, they gave me a script for a commercial. I had to make the storyboard. I had to build all the assets, texture, look dev, light, render, comp, animate, everything, and basically create the final result. So that way we kind of I got a taste of what it is on all the stages of the work, which was very, very different from the way that we do things now at that time. But still, it kind of showed me that I prefer the back end of the pipeline always, because that was a lot more visually pleasing to me to create the final images. So I very soon realized that I like to do lighting and compositing. And soon after that, actually, companies started hiring people as specialists more. That's how I started as a lighter and a compositor. And then little by little after, became lead and supervisory roles in lighting and compositing. And then that kind of paved my way of my career to kind of CG supervision. I have had fantastic role models and people that taught me a lot. Actually, two of them are in this room right now, Jordan and Daniel. And starting with my mom and dad and my brother, which are all in the same industry. And everybody that I work with, even to this day, every day we're learning things from them. So CG supervision is a very, very collaborative job, as everybody know. It's basically a position that you have to be in to know basically the pipeline from beginning to an end. You might be a specialist in some parts of it more, but the other aspect of the production you have to be very, very familiar with. You have to know the CG pipeline and the pipeline of the company that you work in to be able to make decisions that how things need to be made, and then collaborate with the heads of the departments. And when the decision is made that how something needs to be done, after a VFX supervisor basically tell us the vision. The visual effects supervisor is the person that knows how something needs to look at the end of what needs to be happening. And then it's the job of a CG supervisor to kind of come up and collaborate with the heads of the departments, come up with the best way, a smartest way, most efficient way of achieving that vision. And then after that, it's basically collaborating with the whole entire team, making sure that everybody are in the same page, moving toward the same goal. As I always say, I think a CG supervisor is a facilitator. For myself, I always feel like I have to be there to just make sure everybody are in the same page. We're all moving toward the same goal, make sure every department has what they need from the previous department to be able to move forward. and to reach to the final destination of our goal to create beautiful images and put something on TV or on the movie theater. To me, it's learning every day as much as you can, because as a CG soup is you never know enough. Technology moves forward so fast, so you always have to catch up to be able to know to move forward with the technology, improving new tools that come into the studio, make sure that the pipeline is getting developed according to what needs to be done, which as we all know, every day the demands of the industry are higher and higher. So we develop better tools, better workflows to be able to achieve bigger and better things in a faster and cheaper ways. That way it's learning more and more. It's very, very important. Me and my husband, we elaborated together and made a feature film around 5 years ago, which to me was a really big help in the way that I see the industry and the way that I do my job right now. Because always before that, I kind of knew how movies are made in a very some aspect of it, like the visual effect aspect of it, more tangible, but a lot of other parts of the movie making was all in theory. It's very, very different when you actually start doing all the aspects of a movie making yourself. So we made a very low budget movie that we actually wrote and directed it, and we acted in it. We did the editing, color correcting, all the compositing, all of it by ourselves inside of our own apartment. So that was a very, very huge learning curve and very huge eye-opener on what is actually movies. When we are working on visual effects, what goes beyond when shots are being shot on set, how they are going to work when they come into visual effects, how can we decide how to do things on it. It basically was a really, really big eye-opener for me, and I learned so many things which I didn't know at all before, that now helps me with my job right now. Yeah, at the end of the day, CG supervising is collaborating with everybody inside of a company to just make sure things get done correctly and in the smartest way possible. I have worked on right now. I've been at Spin Production for more than 5 years. At a Spin, we do a lot of really cool TV and feature film visual effect work. Every day, work grows and grows. Shows are higher and higher quality. The more and more incredible things we have to do, the quality constantly improves. So we have to catch up with that, with the industry, and that's what we do at the Spin, which is fantastic. We constantly create new tools and new pipelines to be able to catch up and make things in a faster way and a better quality. We use Katana for our lighting, and as I said, lighting compositing is my passion, the back end of the pipeline. And Katana and Nuke, of course, is our bread and butter right now. It's fantastic. Katana completely changed my life in lighting, actually, and the way I see lighting and the way we can achieve things in such a fast and incredible and efficient ways, which we never were able to do before. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, so I guess it's a lot of things that the two CG soups before me said. It all stands. We are all dealing with the same thing.
Very cool. Thank you, Masa. So Seth, why don't you give us your introduction and take on things, and then let's sort of get into the panel discussion.
Sure thing. Thanks, Jordan. So I kind of have a similar origin story. There was a movie that I saw as a kid. It was Aladdin, and there's a sequence where he's inside the Cave of Wonders and he flies down a wall, and I could tell right away it wasn't traditional animation when he's on the carpet. And I knew right then, I was like, I have to do that when I grow up. So I ended up going to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I got a fine arts degree. And I think that that kind of foundation in art really helps you in your job. Even if you end up becoming very technical, you can always fall back on those fundamentals. As far as like getting into the industry, my recommendation, like I started at the at the bottom. I worked at a local TV station doing horrible TV commercials starting out of school. So if you're trying to get into the industry, I would say just take what you can get and start building that experience. From there, I moved to Los Angeles, and I bounced around to a couple of the big studios. This was in the early 2000s. I tried a bunch of different hats, and I think that has really helped me in my career. I started as like a match move artist and went into technical animation and started doing some previs and post-viz, all in visual effects. Ended up doing a little bit of lighting and compositing. So I kind of worked my way from like the very start of the pipeline all the way through to the end of the pipeline when I did some compositing. And having touched so many different disciplines, I found myself just kind of being trying to do that one-man band generalist sort of thing, and I did that for many years at some big studios and small studios, and had some opportunities to go on set, and that really helped me understand the entire process. I think so much so we work on a project and you see your one little piece, in your assembly line. And what has helped me not also have compassion for the other departments, because so much, you find yourself getting something from another department and you feel frustrated that it's not up to par or whatever, there are issues with it. And if you touch all these different parts of the process of making visual effects or animation, it really helps you understand the people before you in the process and all of the decisions they have to make and all of the constraints that they work under. So when you're working on your little piece, you can understand the best way when you're supervising an entire project to make decisions along the way, that it's not only going to work for one team, but it's going to work for everybody that has to grab that, after you've touched it. So after doing some of that kind of onset kind of data collection, I moved into texturing and shading, and that's really where I was introduced to the Foundry. This was at Atomic Fiction in Montreal, and jumped into kind of holistic asset development, and that's still with that kind of generalist background. And I ended up running their asset department for a few years. And because we were so early in the pipeline, and when you develop an asset, it has to go into all the different departments. I ended up interfacing with all of those teams quite often, and that gave me a real big umbrella picture of all the little pieces of the pie that end up happening in a production. And so that's when I started moving into CG supervision, because it was just kind of the natural progression of my career at that point. But I would say that, like, in CG supervision, it can look very different at different companies. And so as I bounced around to different companies, you can see that the job can look different in different pipelines. It can look different at different companies. And so I would say that if you're trying to get a real good understanding of not just one company's process, but how the industry works, I would explore a little bit, because there are brilliant artists and technical innovators anywhere you go. At any studio, there'll be somebody that you can learn from, and so you can take those little pieces of information as you grow over your career and just kind of constantly keep collecting them, and they'll just make you a better artist and a better supervisor. Because I would say that, I agree with the other panelists that like a big part of your job is knowing who the experts are and helping pull the best work from those people. Because chances are you're at your studio, you've got experts sitting all around you, so you should really leverage all of those people, and all of the time that they've spent honing their skills. Like you can't be the best lighter or the best compositor and the best effects artist, so you need to make sure that you really work with your team and lift those people up. I would say that when you're doing CG supervision, and I'm pretty new to CG supervision in a fully animated pipeline, but there are some differences that I've noticed between that and visual effects. I feel like visual effects is a lot more technical solutions and creative problem solving and out of the box thinking, and finding ways that you can hit the target, and it's going to require some new workflows or some a little technique that you picked up somewhere else. And so far for me in animation, it's a lot more art direction. You still have a lot of the same kind of technical problems that you have to solve and out of the box thinking, but since you can really just do anything, you need to I end up falling back on my art background quite a bit. So I think that if you're trying to get into CG supervision, I would try and touch as many parts of the process as possible, and then leverage the experts around you and learn from whoever you can. That would be my advice.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so if you guys have questions, please put them into the questions tab. It's on the second option in on the social media panel on the right-hand side. While you guys are starting to fill in some questions, I'll throw out a few conversation starters, and let's go through starting with same order, Daniel, John Mario, Damaso, Seth. So let's start with a couple. So all of you have either got a lighting, compositing, or an asset, so like the two extreme ends of the pipeline. And a lot of you touched on needing to cross boundaries of all the departments and talk to many people. For those that might be stronger in animation and sort of middle pipeline roles in the audience, have you worked with peers in the CG field that sort of had that as their genesis, their big start to the industry, or have you found that it's predominantly been in the two ends because of how they cross over? And if so, what would you recommend to somebody that's sort of in that middle part of the pipeline for building themselves into a CG supervisor? So Daniel?
That's an excellent question. I have to admit that the majority of CG supervisors I worked with in that respect do come from the imaging side of things, so lighting and compositing. Having said that, I met fantastic people from the layout side of things, for example, or animation. And I think that the reason why maybe lighting and compositing has some higher numbers is because we do have the responsibility to put the final images together and make sure everything works. So being lighting and compositing closer to the end of the pipeline is a more natural spot for us to be in sometimes. Having said that, that does not necessarily respect or present what we really do during the day. I would spend most of my time probably jumping around other departments, and most often layout and animation themselves, mainly because they do provide all the elements and the models and anything that we need to put in the final images. So making sure the inventory is clean is very critical. I mean, like Masa and everyone else mentioned before, we do have the responsibility to make sure everyone knows what they have to do and how things have to be received. The cleaning of the inventory is a critical responsibility for us, because the cleaner the inventory is, the easier it's for us to produce images and make supervisors or clients happy. I guess it becomes natural once you're in lighting and compositing to have that, understanding and sensibility to the inventory, and that's probably why the step from there to CG supervising it's a bit closer. Other CG supervisors I've seen have been, in shading, for example, and some of them coming from other disciplines. And I have to say, they all, once you reach that kind of understanding and sensibility, they're all absolutely fantastic people. So.
Okay. Jean Mario.
Yeah, I agree with Daniele. I think it's more physiological to get a CG supervisor from lighting or look dev, but I did see amazing people also from tech, for example. So CFX, technical animation, they're very technically savvy. They know how to fix things, which is one of the tasks of the CG supervisors. Lighting is a little easier in a way to travel to the CG supervision, because we get everything from every department, and we kind of have to make it work. And if it doesn't work, we need to know who to speak to and to get it fixed, or how to fix it ourselves. So that is why I think we see more from that discipline compared to other. But that doesn't mean that they're the best. I've seen amazing people from other departments as well. I've never seen one from animation, which is a very different department in my opinion, but I mean, why not?
Absolutely. Okay, then Masa.
You're muted.
Sorry, Masa, you're muted.
I'm muted. Oh, sorry. No, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. I think for myself, my path through lighting and compositing to CG supervision, I completely agree with the two other panelists. When you are a lighter, or especially if you're a lighting supervisor, you basically have to know the whole entirety of the pipeline. From beginning all the way to end, because lighting is at the end of the pipeline. So everything from all other departments have to flow nicely into lighting department, so lighters can actually do their job. So as a lighting supervisor, you basically end up collaborating with all the other departments ahead of you to get the workflow working correctly, to get all the inventory clean and nice, to come to the department that you're supervising. And that, to me, is pretty much 3/4 of what a CG supervisor does. So it's a very, very natural transition from supervising a lighting and compositing department to CG supervision. Because the only thing that after that gets added to CG supervision is the big decision making and real collaborations with the head of the other departments to actually make final decisions that how everything needs to be done. It doesn't mean that the CG supervisor knows the answer to every single question and knows the best way of doing everything. But as Seth mentioned before, it's very important to know how to get the best ways out of the experts of every department and put them together and create a really final, nice workflow and pipeline together for a specific goal to achieve. And then make sure after that everybody, all of the people in the different departments are on the same boat. They are having what they need to come to them cleanly from the department before them. And this facilitating that is a big part of a CG supervisor's job. Fixing the problems. If at any stage of the way that workflow is breaking, to CG supervisor to figure out why is that breaking. Collaborate and communicate with other departments that to be able to get that problem fixed and make the flow of the work from department one to department end in a nice fast flow. So that's why it's starting from back end of the pipeline is a big help. But right now, even at the Spin, I'm working with other CG supervisors, which are started from other departments. Like one is more actually expert at the front end of the pipeline, which actually it's very fantastic because me and him, we collaborate with each other really fantastically because we both have expertise, one at the front end of the pipeline, one at the back end, and it creates a really, really fantastic dynamic that it's make the project go forward a lot faster and easier and better. So I actually think a company will really, for a company, it's very valuable to have CG supervisors that have different expertise. And put them together and let them collaborate with each other. To me, that's the best way of achieving the best goal, fastest and most efficient way.
Okay, cool, great, thank you. And Seth, you've got the interesting sort of history of spending time as a generalist and then also coming into CG supervision from the asset department. So what's your view on this?
I would very much agree that it's not so much the discipline that you're coming from. I also have not seen somebody from animation, but I've seen, I've seen lighters, effects supervisors, asset supervisors all go into, even modeling supervisors going into CG supervision. It's more of the personality trait of being willing to facilitate and collaborate and open up communication with all of the people in the studio to like pull out the best ideas, and then also having touched little pieces and having that kind of bird's eye view, you can weigh all of those expert opinions and be like, okay, this is the right choice for whatever problem that you're trying to solve. Because you'll have to gather all of that and kind of make that final decision because you're looking at the whole process and not the little piece of it. There's some great effects supervisors, like I know James, who's in the chat. He comes from effects background and he's a great CG supervisor. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily lighting. It's definitely the most common that I've seen. I see that career path from lighting to CG supervision and comp to VFX supervision. That seems to be a pretty common career path for a lot of people, but I wouldn't say it's a rule.
Okay. So I'm just going to try and merge together some of these questions and provide some context. So what about the time that you used to spend as an artist working directly on material, and what about now as a CG supervisor? So are there things that have you lost time at the keyboard and doing the artwork because you have all these extra responsibilities? Because we all got into the field because of something that we loved, and it was a life less ordinary, and we have it was a great way to sort of have a creative career path. So what is the balance? What is the trade-off in being a CG supervisor, having come to this as an artist? And yeah, what's your guys' take on that side of the things?
I guess that's another good question. It's one of the things I miss the most, being on my keyboard and doing art, right? That's one of the reasons why I got involved in this business, being Jurassic Park or Toy Story. And along the years, you realize that your talents and skills move you around the business in one way or another. And I think I can speak for all of us today here that if you listen to any of our words, we all love collaborating with other people. We all are very versatile. We all like to put our hands into things and fix them and make sure everyone is happy. And we all are hard workers. So those combinations eventually move you towards different types of responsibilities. And in my day, I do spend most of the time in meetings, sometimes 10 hours a day. And sometimes I try to find time for myself, maybe one day a week or half day a week, where I can go back to my desk and I'm promised that I can work on a shot or do some lighting or actually writing a piece of code that I wanted to write. So I think that balance, at least in my experience, is something you have to work towards yourself, because we all trying to fit requirements from the company, from the studio, from a client, and that's our primary responsibility. But eventually, that kind of the balance becomes natural to some extent. I would love to be more involved with the art and lighting, and again, of course, that's tricky.
Okay, thank you, Gian Mario.
Yeah, unfortunately, it did change. My keyboard time is different. Not that I don't have it, like Daniele is saying, but it's towards something else right now. So it's less being an artist per se, and more on helping the others succeed on what they're doing and try to make it as smooth as possible. I do as well find sometimes to get back to that job, just because you need to know how to do it also. Like if you completely lose contact to that part of the job, then you don't even know if what you're building is actually working for the artists. So you cannot lose that part completely, 100%. But yeah, it has been reduced by meeting or by talking to the client, because that's also one of my tasks, for example. So it's different. It's a different approach, but not completely lost, in my opinion.
Okay, and Masa?
Yeah, I agree with both Daniel and Mario. It's very, very hard to find time to be on the keyboard because of all the responsibilities of basically a whole entire crew need to do their job, and you need to facilitate, you need to be in communication with them constantly, you need to be in the meetings. But at the same time, me, myself, I sometimes, even to the detriment of my position, I have to have my hands dirty on some things. I can't go through a day without opening a Katana file or open Maya or Nuke and not touch something and not do something in them. And sometimes even, especially lighters, sometimes even get bothered by me, because instead of putting notes for them, I sometimes go and open the file and fix it myself. So, and I ask them, can you please render this? Which is really not a good thing to do sometimes. But I just have to, first of all, as Mario says, I have to keep myself up to date, especially with the technology that goes on really fast. I feel like if I don't touch the software for a month, after a month, I don't even know how to do that. So how can I facilitate if I don't know how to do something myself? At least to the back of the pipeline that it's my expertise. So I have to kind of keep myself up to date as much as possible. But at the same time, it's difficult, and depends on the projects as well. Like I was very lucky on one of the projects, the Hunter Killer movie that I worked on. I actually got a chance to light and comp pretty much all of the shots that were happening underwater for that show. So I created the whole look under the water in lighting and in compositing, and I actually lit and comped to the final all the shots, which was really amazing. It was really fun, even though I was still taking care of like stuff coming from the other departments what I needed to come to me to be able to do that back end of the pipeline. So that still was happening, but I could actually hands-on sit and create art, which was very fulfilling. But majority of the time, no, it's very, very hard to find time on the box and sit and actually do something. But at the same time, the art part of it is always there, because you're constantly actually directing people and commenting on their work and asking them to do something that to create the look, because that's part of our job as CG supervisors, to creatively and artistically create the final look of something. So that aspect is a constant ongoing thing. Even if I'm not on the box doing it myself, I'm constantly collaborating with people for that to be happening. So that aspect of it is very fulfilling.
Awesome. And what about you, Seb?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I don't get to spend much time on the box now, and initially that was a really difficult transition to make. But I would describe it similar to like, playing in an orchestra as opposed to being the conductor. And I think you can find fulfillment and joy in both parts of it. So I agree, that with Masha, that you have to really be on top of your game with new workflows and new techniques and new technologies, because a lot of that is a lot of what is new that's coming to the studio will come through the CG supervisors. So I still think you have to be on the box enough to be really familiar with the tools, to be able to use the right language and solve the problems in a way that you can then hand down to the artists that you work with, or collaborate with the other department heads to find those solutions as well. But it was initially a difficult transition, but I've now grown to love all of the facilitation and collaboration and like trying to lift up and extract the best work from artists, because there's some incredibly talented people in this industry.
Thanks very much for that, Paul.
Yeah, well, I think that last point's really key, in that there's a definite mentorship element to being a CG supervisor, and definitely like a pay it forward. We all have learned from the people that came before us, even though it's a relatively young industry. No one has created it all from scratch. A lot of ideas are built, learned, taught, and then handed forward. So a few questions on technology and pipeline, and starting from like a pipeline point of view. So let's sort of round this out as you all talked about pipeline and being involved in it, and how much of your involvement in pipeline has been hands-on coding. Daniel and Gian Mario, you both talked about this. So how important is that hands-on pipeline tools creation experience being for you as a CG supervisor? And how does someone that starts in the more technical tools side of things find their way into, leverage that into a CG supervisor role?
It's complex, like the Python is pretty complex.
But very good questions as well. I think that it's not necessarily a rule that you have to be a coder or a programmer to do this job. I think what's more normal to happen is that you have some skills and you grow your skills, like Seth was mentioning, and you improve on your skills by spending time on them and learning new software tools, and then you fit your skills into those requirements. The reason that being a lighting compositor can help you is because, at least in my personal experience, once you have that kind of sensibility, artistic sensibility, supervisors tend to trust you a bit more. At least that's what I found. And that opens a lot of doors, right? And when you have the trust from the people above you, being the boss, client, or VFX supervisor, all of a sudden you have the ability to make bigger differences and impact more people, and that becomes naturally improving in pipeline, which means you get more shots and higher quality, whatever that is.
Which is essentially
for example, just to bring my experience on the table, I never went to school to learn programming, but I did my last studio with I wrote maybe 90 to 100,000 lines of code. And that's mainly because I felt that there was a need to help people moving forward and focus on the art side of things more than the technical. And because that I was sensible enough to realize there was a need, then that's why I put my effort into it. Did I go into this business thinking that I needed to know programming and to do art? No, of course not. It just came as an evolution in my career.
Okay, Gian Mario?
I do it because it's fun. Like sometimes I do a little script, or I write a little shader in OSL or whatever it is that we're using at that time. But in general, I would lie if I said, yeah, I can code the pipeline myself. That is not the case. That is not my expertise. And there is people that are way better than me. Now, that being said, I think we do have to know it a little bit, in my opinion, because sometimes we may suggest an implementation to the development team. I think it's better to do it that way or this way compared to, hey, use that function, like that specific Python function, or use this because it's better. No, that's not, I don't think that's my job. And there is better people to do that, especially in our studio.
Okay, thank you. And Masa?
Me, myself, I'm not a programmer at all. I actually, when I went to Sheridan, I learned programming in the technical direction course. And then for a few years after that at work, I did a bit of making little scripts here and there. But the way that my career evolved, programming was never actually part of that. But I can say that throughout my career, in all the different companies that I work in, and I'm always a big part of creating a pipeline in a way of not actually programming and making the tools, rather knowing what things needs to be done, how is the best way of something to be done, what every department needs to be able to do their job, and what tools they need, and then requesting that tool to be made by the developing team of the company that then they can create. So I think for a CG supervisor, that's very important to understand the pipeline that way, to know what type of tools are necessary, and it's going to help the whole workflow and all different departments to do their job. But I don't necessarily like me myself, I would never actually make those tools, but we always have meetings about tools that are needed. When pipeline team are developing the pipeline, CG supervisors are always involved with it to just make sure that, yes, the tools are working the way that it needs for the workflow and the pipeline of the company to go on in a very smooth and best way possible. So I think understanding that is very important. But coding, yes, of course, it's a plus. It's a very fantastic thing if CG supervisor can do. But I don't think that's like 100% necessity. Or even if they know, as Daniel and John Mario was saying, how much actually they can do that, that's not become, because that's such a huge expertise that I think when people sit and spend all their day to create a code, to create a tool that works perfectly, that's a very, very specific expertise that is not going to even really like for a CG soup to put that among 100 other things that they have to do per day. That's a little bit difficult to do.
Okay, thanks. And Seth?
Yeah, I'd very much agree with Masha. I'm in the realm of being able to kind of copy paste stuff around and just hobble something together as maybe an example to give to a real pipeline developer. I find that it was most useful to kind of understand the concepts of what is possible, what is hard, was relatively easy to do, and then work closely with the pipeline department to kind of ask for their guidance, but then give them a list of like, hey, this is how I kind of want it to work. Is this possible? How long will that take? So I think it's you know, it's not necessary to have that as part of your you know, being able to like bang out the code, but I think it's really important to understand some of the concepts of coding and pipeline, even if you can't write it yourself.
Okay, so we probably have time for just doing one more question or sort of wrap-up thought. So what I'd like you all to sort of leave everybody with is, so we've talked about the different range of experiences and technical versus artistic, time away from the, you know, the art versus mentorship and leading people. So there's lots of trade-offs and balances in this. But what is the one thing, like when you have your best day, what is the one thing that makes being the CG supervisor worth it?
Oh my goodness, there's too many probably to mention for me, but in my case, the end product is always what drives us. So you know, final images they speak for themselves.
if I get a file,
Having said that, I'm making this VFX supervisor happy is always quite a success story. If I look back, this may sound odd, but if I look back and I see all the projects I worked on, most of the time I remember the people I worked with, the people I collaborated with, and the stories we have together. So having that collaboration and team effort to make a product together is what drives me most of the time, and knowing that people either under me or around me or above me are happy, it's pretty much what I aim for. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder, depending on the clients and depending on deadlines. But that's probably my driving force at the moment.
Okay.
Mari basically runs.
And yeah, for me it's the same. I think working with people is probably the most fulfilling part of being a CG supervisor, and together with seeing everything works fine, those are the two things that balance this job the most. And of course, working with people also means that you learn from them, because I think this field is so vast that we cannot know everything, and there is always stuff to learn. And the way we learned, or I learned specifically, is by working with other artists.
Kind of paintable, almost like a paint note, but still
Very cool.
live,
Well
still
said.
has a connection to its upstream.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. As the collaboration part of the job is the most fulfilling. The days that when I leave work and come home, I feel like I achieved something, or those days that we have a very big problem and we all get into the boardroom, bang our heads against each other. There's so much talent, so much knowledge among everybody that we talk about it, we come up with fantastic ideas, we create a way to do something, and then we come out of the room. That's so fulfilling. That's definitely one of the best things. The second thing that I normally, at the end of the day, I make me feel good feeling that I've done my job that day and I actually have achieved something, is a day that I see that every department can do their own job perfectly without having problems. That means that the flow of work between department to department is happening nicely, problem-free. Every department get everything that they need from the previous department properly and can spend their work instead of troubleshooting, actually doing that work nice and smooth. And that's when I feel like, okay, I've done my job that day. That's very good. And of course, at the end of the day, when things go smoothly like that, then those are the days that you achieve beautiful images that come out, and everybody will be happy. Company will be happy because everything is on time, and visual effects supervisors are happy because everything looks fantastic. Clients are happy. So that day we know that, okay, we've done our job properly, and that's fulfilling.
Very cool. Seth?
I love the collaboration as well, but I think for me, it's you do so much preparation and planning in this role that it's like putting when you're doing a puzzle and you finally put that last piece in and you see the whole puzzle in front of you. When a plan like falls into place and it works, like that's the most satisfying feeling to me in this job, because you do planning and reference gathering and collaborating with artists, and there's like all this stuff, and then when it finally kind of that last puzzle piece goes in, you get to see the whole picture. That's really, really satisfying.
Awesome. Great answer. Thank you. So everybody, we would love to keep going, but we kind of have sort of come to the end of our time slot. So I want to thank all the panelists. Everyone, thank you so much for all your input. You've been awesome. There's a whole range of questions, so maybe we can spend a bit of time just answering a few that we didn't have a chance to touch on in the conversation, just in the chat form there. But everybody else, thank you so much for joining. If you've enjoyed this, please let us know. We would love to do more panels like this for you. If this has helped you in some way, shape, ideas of how you could become a CG supervisor in your career, then we feel like we've reached our goal. And yeah, just keep in touch, keep coming to the virtual events, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jordan.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
When you say updates, out of date fakes, and you can do that even from the bottom of your graph.